Wexford. I'm the head of executive search at Clarity Recruitment. Today we have a good friend, Kelly Murphy. Kelly, thanks for coming in today.
Happy to be here.
So Kelly, we've known each other for several years now. And
Just a few.
Yeah, and very honored to have you here today.
Thank you.
Curious to learn a little bit more about your journey and your experience working as a finance leader within the alcohol beverage space.
Yeah, I have to admit it's a different industry. You don't run across a lot of people in it, specifically in the finance world. I myself got into it totally by accident and have sort of stayed there just out of a love of it. There's a really great culture that comes with working with people who tend to stay in the same industry for most of their careers, and they have a ton of fun doing it. So it's one of those real work hard, sort of play hard cultures. There's a lot of difference between the size of the company you work at. There's the big guys that are very similar to other large companies, and there's the small to medium size, which is where I've normally found myself throughout my career. And they tend to have a bunch more sort of family sort of feel to it. But I have to say the best part about it is sort of the whole consumer goods in general. Looking at a product that you helped create or helped bring to life or helped bring to market and seeing it on a shelf somewhere or seeing one of your friends drink it in a bar or having you send me a picture of it from a store you found at. Yeah. And it's just really neat to watch something go full circle like that.
Very cool. So a couple things there. You said that you kind of found your way into this. How did you find your way into this?
The standard story all accountants have. I was bartending and I met a recruiter who offered me a job at Red Bull, actually. So I've actually only ever exclusively worked with recruiters, hence the wonderful relationship we have. And I started out at Red Bull, which you don't think of as an alcohol company, really, but they're in all the same places as alcohol. So it sort of introduced me to the general industry, and afterwards I moved over to Molson, a beer company. Spent some time there and then moved over to Russian Standard Vodka, and I'm now where I am. So
yeah.
They say do what you love.
For sure. So you look at that, you touched on earlier, working for a big company to more of a smaller company. What was the biggest learning coming from a Molson to, say, the head of finance role at Russian Standard Vodka?
It's night and day, for sure. I've always said big companies work for some people, small companies work for others. I'm more of the latter myself. There were some huge learnings I got working in a big company. The scale there is just phenomenally different than what you'll see in a small to medium size. But what I really found was it was a little limiting. You know, if there was an area that you wanted to spend more time learning about or spend more time actually working in, it was really hard to get that kind of exposure. When you move to a smaller or medium-sized company, sort of everything's within your reach. It's not hard to walk over and talk to the guy who runs supply chain, or head over and speak to a sales guy, or have lunch with somebody from marketing. And I found that I got a real breadth of an understanding of an organization that I couldn't have gotten in a bigger place. And for me, that was sort of my niche. I like to spend time with a lot of different types of people and learn their roles in that. So being able to be in an environment where that's accessible to me made me not only learn so much more, but just meet so many more people than I think I would have elsewhere.
Fantastic. And then if you look at the time when you made a move in there, were the expectations matching reality? Did you think it was going to be what it was like, or was it completely different when you made a move from Molson to Russian Standard?
It's a good question, actually. I had no idea what to expect. That was my third job ever moving over to Russian Standard.
Yeah.
I knew almost nothing about the company because they were brand new and they just started up in 2013 at the time, and so I think they were about 2 years old when I jumped in. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and I just walked in the door going, I will figure this out, which has sort of become my mantra over the years. But I have to say, I never understood how much work goes into a smaller organization until I joined one. You know, you kind of look at them and you think, ooh, startup vibe, they have margarita machines and we go out every Friday for drinks. But there is so much work that goes into running sort of an entrepreneurial vibe, smaller organization. And it's really neat to see everybody roll up their sleeves and jump in together, which the best organizations of that size, that's who they hire, right? Yeah. It's not that's not my job. Go find someone to do it. It's, you know what, that's not my thing, but I'll figure out how to help you with it. Yeah. And then I'll get back to my job afterwards. So there's a real sort of team vibe that comes with it, and I think it makes all that work really worthwhile in the end.
My next question would be, is there any major differences working for, Red Bull, a beer company, spirit company, vodka company? Any major challenges, or are they pretty similar?
You would think they would be, right? They all seem pretty normally similar. Actually, the whole market of everything is different depending on the beverage you're working with. So specifically when you think Red Bull versus just alcohol in general, as soon as you go into alcohol, you're talking about an incredibly regulated environment. Every piece of the manufacturing, of the shipping, of the purchasing, of the sending, of the everything is completely controlled by government regulation that you have to follow. And to make it even more fun, it's provincially regulated, which means every province has a completely different set of rules. So it's kind of like operating in 10 different countries at once, which is pretty neat, actually. But even beer itself, the process of manufacturing, of getting the right licensing for it, of pushing it through the right customer channels. You buy it at the beer store, you buy it at the grocery store. Unfortunately, we can't have a gin smash alongside you there for the reasons of being spirits. So what I actually found was more interesting was the different market that each one of those is geared towards.
Okay,
you kind of think alcohol, you think, oh, that's everybody just drinks, right? But each individual sector has its own customer, it has its own route to market, it has its own sort of effective marketing. And what was really neat for me is over the years I've gotten to be so involved with the marketing and sales people, being in a smaller organization, that I got to learn all that. And so sitting down with the marketing guy and saying, okay, well, how do you sell beer? Or how do you sell vodka? Or how do you sell premium vodka versus standard vodka? Or how do you sell rum? And they're completely different in a lot of different ways. You're marketing to totally different people who will accept different things and are looking for different things.
Interesting. And then where would you say the industry is going when you look at alcohol beverage in the next kind of 1 to 3 years? Are you seeing any trends from your experience?
We're starting to really see a lot of innovation in the industry, which is pretty neat. It opens a lot of different doors to types of products and ingredients that we would have never thought we could use before. Cannabis has sort of created an interesting idea, obviously, in the alcohol industry. We're not really sure.
What do you think is going to happen with that?
We're not really sure where it's going yet, to be honest. There's a lot of studies in the U.S. about the impact of it on versus alcohol and what it's done. Primarily, it seems to have targeted beer, not so much wine and spirits.
Okay.
But it's different everywhere you go. What's really going to be interesting is to see what happens when the cannabis drinks and edibles and things come out later. But personally, I see an overlap, but I also see alcohol as holding its own. When you go to a restaurant, you still want a glass of wine.
Yeah.
When you're out with your friends, you still want a beer. And I don't think you have to pick one or the other. I think they just, they call for different aspects of life.
Fair enough. And when you look back at your journey, would you say that having the relevant skills and experiences stepping as a CFO of a entrepreneurial high growth company is more important than having industry experience as it relates to alcohol and beverage, or is it the opposite?
Actually, interestingly, I think it's the opposite. Okay. And I've had this discussion with a few people who don't necessarily agree with me, but...
Am I one of them?
No. The thing with the alcohol industry is that, like I said, it's incredibly regulated, which means there's a ton of different rules.
Yeah.
And I think if you step in not knowing those rules, it's very easy to make a lot of mistakes and do a lot of work that you'll suddenly realize won't go anywhere. I think a lot of the skills it takes to be effective in an organization you can learn elsewhere, but the actual knowledge of the industry requires working in one of these companies. That said, I learned it. Everybody can learn it. I just think there's a lot of value in bringing an understanding of the whole route to market industry, as opposed to just saying, I know finance and accounting, so I can therefore solve all your problems.
Totally.
So for me, understanding the supply chain aspect, understanding warehousing, understanding manufacturing and the licenses and the ability to store or not store, there's a lot of different things that go into that, and if you don't understand that, there is no way to be an effective decision maker. So while I do think it can be learned, I just think it takes longer. So if you're looking for someone to immediately step in and be effective, I think that industry knowledge really helps. But if you're willing to put the time in to learn the industry, there's no reason you can't come and participate.
Understanding the business, the markets, how they make money is really important. It just helps you hit the ground
Absolutely.
faster. What is the revenue model in the alcohol beverage industry? How do you guys make money?
It's difficult. It's, as you know, we're also set by pricing limits based on what we're allowed to put things out. You can't just market your vodka for 50 cents if you feel like it. Otherwise, I'm sure somebody would. Even bucket beer is difficult to get. So for us, what's really interesting is we're working in an environment with one customer in each province for the most part, with the exception of BC and Alberta, which are slightly more open markets.
Okay.
So you're marketing to one customer with one set pricing model, with one set marketing model, with one set supply chain model. There's not a lot of flexibility. And that's actually what makes innovation and things like that so important in this category, is you have to continually be coming up with something new ahead of time to be able to keep consumers interested in your product. There's not much you can do on pricing. It's an incredibly sensitive topic to people. You go in and you see $2 off a bottle of vodka, you get so excited that you buy it, and you think to yourself, do I really care about that toonie, or was I just really excited that it was on sale?
Yeah.
So if that vodka is $2 more, you're not going to buy it. So for us, it's very difficult to work on revenue. So mostly what we have to focus on is cost, which you don't make as much as you think you do in the alcohol industry on the revenue side. So for us, we've really focused on keeping things really lean, on doing the best we can to source at the best prices, to manufacture in a way that doesn't take up too much cash, because as a startup, working capital is something that's hard to come by.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lot more we do on the other side of things. Revenue is you're a little bit stuck in a lot of ways.
So Kelly, I'm going to take you through a mental model right now, and I'm curious. We get so busy with our career and we're always looking at, okay, what's next? We never stop to reflect of how we got to where we were. Were there any themes that you could describe about your background, about what made you successful in your role today as a CFO of a high growth company? Could it be life experiences? I know you're a competitive figure skater when you're a kid, I think a gold medalist. Was there any life skills from that really helped parlay into the professional setting?
Absolutely. It's, to be clear, been a very long time since I put a pair of skates on. But I think we're all the sum of our experiences. And what I actually think is so unique about that is, and I say this to a lot of students who are coming up through the accounting profession, you can add your own flavor to your career based on everything that you've come from. And I think that's great. I don't think everyone should come from a cookie cutter background of, having gone to school, worked for a big four, and now they're out. For myself, for example, I never did that. But going back through things like figure skating, I was just telling you I used to be in a musical performance group when I was a kid. I bartended for a long time after school. I didn't know I wanted to be an accountant for years after I finished university. I think we all take different routes to get where we're going, and that's actually what makes us bring such different insights to the organizations we work in. For me, figure skating in particular, it teaches you work ethic. And that's been a theme of my career for a very long time. I knew that I wanted to work really, really hard up front, get ahead, really try to put the hours in while I still have the energy and the time to do it. As you know, I have a very draining 10-month-old right now, so I'm very glad I did the work when I did so that it's a little bit more comfortable these days. But I do very firmly believe that there is something called a work-life balance, but it's just that, it's a balance. I made the decision for me that work was going to be a little more important than life. And I got the ability to focus on it, to put all my energy into it from things like figure skating. Bartending for me was awesome for communication skills. It's the only way I learned to talk to people. I used to be incredibly painfully shy when I was younger.
No way.
And
I don't believe you. I do not believe you.
I get that a lot. And it taught me to just learn to talk to anybody. And communication skills in organization these days are so important.
Yeah.
Especially for finance people. We're the holders of all the numbers. We're the people who know everything about the organization, and there's no value to it if you can't share it with anybody else. And I'm always trying to tell the kids coming up through accounting and stuff, just learn to talk. Learn to explain accounting to people who don't know accounting. Learn to talk about financial concepts with people who have no idea what you're talking about. It's very simple when you really think about it, but you have to put it into different words for people and think about who you're speaking to when you do it.
So what advice would you give about how to establish finance as a business partner and how to communicate to non-finance people?
For me, most of it was about actually not talking at first. My favorite thing to do is just go around and learn what everybody else does.
Yeah.
I love to hear where their challenges are. I really like to hear what makes their job different or exciting, or what drives them absolutely crazy. Because most of the time I've found that there's something I can do to help with it. And as a business partner, the job is not to do what you're doing and only what you're doing. The job is to help the organization. And the only way to do that is if you know what the organization actually needs. So for me, it was going out and talking to supply chain, going out and talking to marketing, go out and talking to sales, because I realized finance really essentially is a service. And if I'm not providing a service to all these other departments, then I'm not doing my job properly. So to me, it's not so much cross-functional leadership as it is trying to help the organization as a whole by understanding what it actually needs.
Kels, how did you get into finance and accounting?
It's a lame answer, but it was my mom.
Okay, was she an accountant?
No, actually, she's a teacher, a music teacher. But I finished school. I thought I wanted to go into sort of retail management. I had an aunt who worked in that, and I just thought it was really cool.
For sure.
So I actually started at Town Shoes as trying to work my way up the management ladder, and I realized I had just gone totally wrong with my personality. That wasn't what I was looking for. I'd spent a lot of time in school and business, and it just wasn't meshing. And I remember calling my mom going, I don't know what to do. And she'd said, well, what did you do in university that you really enjoyed?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't know. I did this management accounting course, and I did really well in the final. I don't really think I studied. And she was like, well, why don't you do that? And that's why I'm here today.
No way.
I enrolled in what was then the CMA program and went through it, and I never regret it for a minute. So thanks, Mom.
When you look at your past experience coming in as a new CFO or a new finance leader in an entrepreneurial owner-managed organization, how have you built trust with the exec team or the founder, for example, as the lead finance person?
I've been very lucky in the last organizations I've worked at that I've worked with some really incredible leaders and CEOs that are very easy to get along with and not the difficult types to throw something at you that you realistically know just can't be done. But both of them, again, I think it came back to sitting down with them and really understanding what they needed so that I could get them some value quickly. You know, when you're in a small company, it's great to say, let's start at the beginning and build the systems up perfectly. It's going to take me a year. But most of these people need answers really quickly.
Yeah.
What I've also found, though, is that most organizations wait way too long to bring the right finance person in. And by then, it's actually pretty easy to add a lot of value up front in the first probably 2-3 months.
Yeah.
All it takes is to figure out the size of the problem and start throwing some really big rocks back. So for me, I've been lucky enough to have some pretty big gems come up in the first few months that make it easy to show that I know what I'm doing. But again, it also comes down to communication. I don't like to just lock myself in a room and park myself away and say, you don't need to know what I'm doing. I'm very open. These are my plans. This is how long it's going to take. This is the money I'm going to need. This is the team I'm going to need. And I find as long as you're communicating with people, they don't tend to have a trust issue because they know you're going to tell them when something's happening. It's those ones that are very quiet or very isolated or not as open to sharing what they're doing that makes you worry, right? So for me, like I said, I've got a really great relationship with the leaders I've worked with. They're both incredibly, really smart people who know what they're doing, and that's really neat to be around. So I think the trust actually ends up going both ways.
When you look back, what skills and experiences do you think is needed in a CFO of a medium-sized and growing alcohol beverage company?
I think what it ultimately comes down to is it's not so much, again, what you can list on your resume that you've done. I think all of us can say that there's something on a resume we did for the first time that wasn't there before, and it didn't mean that we didn't do it great. So for me, it's not saying I've done a system implementation, I've done reporting, I've raised money, I've reported to a board. All those things are great skills to have, but they're not necessarily what makes you a different leader. For me, I come back to a very strong focus on cross-functional working, on understanding what you're trying to do in an organization and how you provide value to everybody else and not just the CEO and not just the board. Of getting involved, of being part of the company. Historically, us accountants aren't known to be the most social people, so it's nice to get out there and be part of an organization and to feel part of the fibers of it and really built into the culture of it. So especially in organizations where we're all really working really hard, this means a lot to us, we're all really passionate about what we do, you need to bring that with you, I think. And having that adaptability, that versatility to take on anything because you like the challenge is a good skill to bring along too.
I'd agree. And in your eyes, what is leadership to you?
I actually think it's not really leading, I think it's working with people. And that probably sounds super cliche, like I took it out of a magazine, but I didn't. I thought a lot about this because I find the best leaders you don't really know are actually the leaders. They're the people who are working with everybody else. They have the mind to the bigger picture about what's going on, but they're not sitting in an office over here while everyone else is at cubicles. They're actively involved on the groundwork day to day with everybody. They pitch in when they need to. They go to the higher up stuff when they need to, but that doesn't make them different. It makes you just the leader. And I think people naturally gravitate towards people who take that attitude, who don't make them feel lesser, who make them feel like part of something instead.
Kelly, it was an absolute pleasure today learning about your experience within the alcohol and beverage industry. And again, I'm so honored to have been able to share this experience with you and our relationship over the years. Thank you for coming in.